Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to get started here. I have my clocks showing different times, so we're going to go ahead and get started, at least as an introduction. So welcome to our September 2023 Federal Fiscal Grants Communities of Practice. We are coming live to you from the State Department of Education here in beautiful downtown Boise. We're so glad that you could join us here today. I know September is crazy, but so is August and so is July. So we appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to come here to participate and listen to ways that you can possibly enhance your own experience and understanding for grants management and building better communities of practice in our schools and departments across the state. So with that, we're going to get started because as always, we have a really big, exciting agenda for everybody. So today we're going to start by doing some congratulations and some celebrations and shout outs. I think that we can never do that enough to recognize each other, to help each other celebrate those victories. So we're going to talk about that and try and make this a regular practice here. We're going to talk about, like we always do, we'll go around the table and we'll go around what's on your radar and we'll say, hey, don't forget, don't lose sight of what's on the data acquisition calendar. We'll do a quick recap on August and what we talked about, just in case you missed it. That way, if you did, and if it piques your interest, you can take a look back, as we always post all those resources. But one thing we are going to discuss in depth a little bit here today is the final countdown of some grants that are all ending. And selfishly, this is my platform today for the most part, because I've got like 5 or 6 grants ending here in a couple weeks. So I want to just touch up on what those intentions for those grant funds were for. And then we're going to go into a quick professional development. We do our PD in 15. We're going to talk about obligation periods under Edgar and what that really means. So to help you guys understand, well, is it really truly a spending cutoff? What does it mean? How do I know what the period of performance versus obligation might be? And then we're going to start talking about effective communication strategy. And this is going to be a several-part series we're going to talk about over the next couple of sessions, the next couple of months. Today, we're going to really focus on internal fiscal and programmatic communication. Next month, we're going to be joined by one of our community partners that's really can be so beneficial to our schools, and that's going to be the Idaho PTA, and how we can use these other partnering agencies and folks to come and help us out and hear our voices, get our messages out. Then today we're also going to talk about audits, because it is audit season. So that's us getting deep into the fiscal side, not too deep, just enough to help you guys not lose sight of a few things that could help you out. We're going to also talk about our newest quick guide reference. I do finally have that ready to go, and it should be posted this week for you all guys to start referencing. And then we're going to just highlight the ESEA IDEA Fall Conference that's going to be in Coeur d'Alene this next week. And thank you to those who attended the one that we just had last week in Nampa. All right, let's start with some great congratulations and celebrations and shout outs. So I don't know if you all seen it in the news, but a huge shout out to Teton Elementary School in Fremont County. What a huge national recognition this is. It really does serve as a symbol of excellence and a model for us to follow. And we all know that many of you guys are experiencing something similar to this in your schools. Maybe not enough to have a national award, but maybe you guys are seeing growth. Maybe you guys are seeing huge achievement levels going up and the gaps going down. So I want to shout out to all of you that may have seen this, even if it's only in one of your schools. Maybe it's in the majority of your schools. Maybe it's one area. So think about that. And, you know, this isn't to pat yourself on the back, but this is a celebration for you, because it should be a celebration. And then really too, in August, I don't know if, you know, folks that are on here that may not be fiscal, but the fiscal folks for sure are celebrating each other's abilities to pass bonds and levies, because we know that if you're going out for one of those, it's because you need something. It might be repairs or enhancements or even computers. So, that's something to celebrate. So if you got that through and it's enabling you to do the things that you need to do for your district, that's a celebration. So I want to start pausing a little bit more on these communities of practice to give you guys a chance to do shout outs for each other. Can you think of something, a shout out to celebrate? Hey, somebody in my district just got some degree, or hey, there's this new initiative that we got through, or we just updated our strategic plan, or I can't wait because of this. So you guys chime in the chat. I want to have some moments for you guys to celebrate. Um, Before I do that, I just want to pause. Did anybody have anything? I'm going to be quiet for a minute. They want to share out loud. Anything that you can think of, so we can celebrate. Well, as you guys are thinking about that, I'm going to bump something up here. I want to announce this new Pathways to Partnerships grant that just came out. It's under the Rehabilitation Services Administration. And they announced, and this is from some language, it wasn't actually today, that there were a lot of projects that they have now focused on and funded to enhance post-school outcomes for students with disabilities. They gave out about really close to 200 million. And it's a really nice partnership. It's the largest ever administered from these guys, and they really want to help to increase those independent living situations and seamless transitions for those students after high school, to prepare them for independent living, to get them into employment, and for full community integration. This is huge. I know many of you guys run these transition programs in your high schools, so this is a huge moment of celebration. And before I tell you how Idaho got, what Idaho got or didn't get, I want to still pause again and give you guys time to celebrate your own victories. So let's stop and think about something that happened to you lately. If you're in fiscal, did you close out? Did you make it through your audit? Have you maybe had enhanced community participation at parent night, even at one of your schools, and you couldn't believe it? That's huge. That means a lot. But really, maybe it was just you have more positions filled. Maybe last year was terrible and this year you're 80% filled. So that's a victory. So I don't want to ever downplay your victories, because some of those mean the world to you. Maybe you guys had bigger carryover funding and it's going to help you get through this year. And that's like the biggest victory of all, because now you don't have to do layoffs. So everybody has their own victory. So please chime in the chat. I also want to share those out when we do our recaps, that we can really take time. Another chance for you guys. Anybody want to unmute and say what a big something was for them? I know it's early. It feels early, even though it's 10 a.m. here. Well, you guys can interrupt me at any time, but I want to do my da-da-da-da moment. This is, back to that Pathways partnership. We just got close to $10 million. So this is super exciting to me. So if you didn't have a victory to share, now you're going to share one, because this means there's going to be something better happening for students in your communities in the transition to their own post-educational experience in their community. So super exciting. You'll see more announcements about this. I just couldn't hold it in. I'm so excited. We can't wait to get this going. So now you have something to celebrate. All right, well, let's jump into what's on your radar, because we do have a lot going on. So anytime I share these, I just want you guys to know that I still want y'all to go out and look at this yourselves, just in case I've filtered down to fit it into our own, what we're going to talk about. But man, was there a lot going on this month. And I know it's already the 21st, but there's still like the bottom half of this page of things happening from today forward that you still got to get done. So there's the Title I-A annual performance report due, school lunch match report. I'm just jumping in the middle of the page for what you haven't already turned in. Literacy intervention expenditure reports, ISAT remediation reports. Oh, you got some Title I neglected delinquent programs things that you need to coordinate with. And then pupil transportation reimbursement claims. That's huge, you guys. So make sure that you don't lose sight of these. And as I've heard from some administrators, they didn't, maybe weren't as aware of how big and robust this list is. So it's been helpful to them to just even remember that this is going on so they can coordinate with their own staff and say, hey, how can I support you? What's going on and what do you still need help with? Is there someone we need to reach out at the state to? If you guys haven't turned your Title I-C migrant information in yet, you need to have reached out to Sarah Seamont. Hopefully you have already. So make sure that you use this list to guide you to look ahead. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to look ahead into October. And I will tell you that this list is filtered down for sure because there was so much in October. I've filtered it to only really be federal related programs here, selfishly, so I can talk about a couple of those. So we know that you've got stuff coming in, the start of your verification process for child nutrition programs. You've got McKinney-Vento stuff coming up. Significant expansion. This is one I'll talk about in a minute. If you are a new district or an expanding charter, or sorry, a new charter or an expanding charter, this applies to you. Now, there's also, if you're brand new, you have to have adopted the state special education policies and procedures. So we need to make sure that you get that on your board agenda, for instance, and that's coming up. So make sure that you get that on there. You've got IC coding for your immigrant students. You've got more McKinney-Vento deadlines, verifications in child nutrition, and then those school improvement plans are coming too. And again, this is just the stuff that was federal only. There was a lot more that was for assessment, accountability, and a lot of other groups like school finance. So don't lose sight of those. This is just really important that we look ahead. So that's when we say, what's on your radar? What do you have to finish this month? But what is coming up next month that might take some time to prepare or that you might need to coordinate with several folks in your LEA? So I mentioned that certification of economically disadvantaged new and expanded charters. You will receive an email very shortly, probably tomorrow. And if you don't get one, then you don't need to do anything. But this is for those folks that gave us their best estimates on their enrollment and their low income eligibility in the spring. And now we have them true up those numbers and say, okay, well, what did it actually hash out to be? And this will affect allocations. So we've got to collect that and make sure that we have the appropriate numbers. All right, well, let's really quick recap last month. We talked about a lot, and I have links within here, and then I have, hopefully you guys know where these resources live, but I like to send out links, just easy button for you guys to get to stuff. But this will give you just an overview if you didn't attend last month, so you understand, hey, what was going on? What did you guys train on? Maybe I should go back and look at those things. So we did a lot. We talked about CFR definitions under uniform grant guidance. We talked about cost principles, allowable, unallowable. We talked about migrant ed specific use of funds, just to give that other, but sometimes it's not always that way. Sometimes there's even more red tape or less, depending on the program. And then we talked about definitions. But let's talk about some of those. This link in here will get you to what we call the definitions within the uniform grant guidance. And so we know sometimes when we get grants or we get an award of some sort, there's all these big words and things that are sometimes not that intuitive to understand. So we're given the link here to get you guys to the language. Here's an example of it that, if you see the words corrective action in some communication from the state or federal, you'll understand what that means. So there's just this huge dictionary basically that gives you an explanation of what this means. And really the reason we want you to know this, because learning that terminology is important to understanding all the fiscal and programmatic intentions and the rules. Part of this communities of practice is to help you guys break down the red tape, because we know that these grant dollars come with lots of red tape sometimes, but we want you to understand it so that you can use it appropriately, because really the red tape is worth it. I tell people, you know what, it's worth it. You got to do what you got to do. But in times like what we're in right now, when possibly state funds are down because of changes in the way we calculate that, going from enrollment back to ADA and things like that, we got to make sure we can use our federal funds. Okay, so we also talked about last month about allocable costs. And really, I do these bold sections or highlights for you sometimes on slides to help you guys get to the gist of what this means. An allocable cost is really if the goods and services involved are chargeable and assignable to the award and the actual objectives of that award. So it has to be incurred specifically for that. You have to make sure that it's necessary to the overall operation of that. And then we jumped forward and we looked at allowable costs. So in the allowable cost language, it talks about being necessary, reasonable, allocable. So they all kind of point to each other, but they all say something different. This one talks about, does it apply and comply with the cost principles of that actual award? What was the principle behind this grant? It needs to be consistent with your own policies and procedures for the uniform grant guidance and your own state procedures. And it has to be treated consistent. So if you treat that cost from one of these awards as a direct or an indirect cost, so you can't just say, I'm not going to include it here because it's in a grant. And it has to be determined in accordance with GAAP. This is all fiscally stuff. Not included or used to meet cost sharing because it's federal. Usually cost sharing, they want to see some of their component of local or state dollars. You have to have it adequately documented, and you have to really have that set aside for internal controls too. And then it has to be incurred in the approved budget period. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. And then reasonable, really the reasonable piece that we talked about was does a prudent person under the same circumstances think that this is allowable and that it also fits that need and the determination of that grant. And then also whether the cost is generalized or recognized as ordinary and necessary. So does it fit that? Is it a sound business practice? All of these things have to be all together. And if you guys had to do a sole source contract, it better fit the total details of that grant award. So make sure that you guys think about this and understand what these pieces mean. And this coming from the Uniform Grant Guidance, if you're not familiar with that, that is the overall generalized federal compliance that helps you understand how to work within the red tape of these grant awards. But we all know there's exceptions to each of them, but the Uniform Grant Guidance gives us the best foundation from which to work. And then we went into the weeds, like I was just mentioning. Each program has their own allowable or unallowable. And some of the grant resources and trainings that we've done on this will give you some of those other one-off situations. And Sarah Seamont last month did a great job giving us some of the insights on migrant ed. And she gave us access to the federal programs has this great cost allowability manual for you guys. So I've got the link in there again for you. But within each of those programs, like Migrant Ed Specific had some use of funds that may not be the same as the generalized foundation of Uniform Grant Guidance. So again, there's exceptions, and it's super important you guys learn about that. Now, let's talk about the final countdown. I almost played that song, but I was worried about copyright. So you guys have that song in your head right now as we think about the pandemic funding that is ending soon. Whew, we have a whole bunch. And as you see in the whole left side of the page, there's a whole bunch that are special ed, which is my world. So that's actually my reaction right now. It might be yours too. And then there's also the ESSER 2, and then your regular 2020 to 23 ESEA title grants. But look at all these little guys on the left that you may or may not have all of these, because some of these were competitive grants for special ed. So within here, we have our ARP, our American Rescue Plan, one-time supplemental IDEA funds. And we had both a preschool and a school-aged that are expiring. We also had recruit, hire, and retain dollars that we gave out for special ed programs to help you guys recruit, hire, and retain your staff. And we had this thing called the SPED Indicator 14. And a lot of people, what is this? I get these questions. They were smaller bits of money, but want to just highlight that you guys don't let that money go to waste. And then Restraint and Seclusion Round 1. We tried to put out some funding for you guys. That's already ending. And then our regular year grant from 2021 is also from the regular and school-aged grants are expiring. So you guys, look in the GRA if you're a fiscal person. Do I have any money left? Don't lose sight of it. If you're a program person, don't hesitate to ask, hey, I think we had that Indicator 14 grant. We spent that out, right? Let's talk about these really quickly. These were competitive grants that recruit, hire, retain. They were only for about a year. They were supposed to be in Fund 257 with a project code, so you keep them separated. So if you have that, try and make sure you can see what those expenses are and that you have grabbed them specific to this funding stream. Indicator 14 was a post-school outcome survey that you guys did where you guys got paid at least $250. And then you kept getting 25 after that. Some of you guys have thousands. So if you haven't spent that out, remember, you can spend that on anything allowable under IDEA Part B. We asked you to do it in Fund 257 again, which is that school-age grant, but to do a project code because it's a separate mini award. And then we started getting so many different awards, we started creating new funds, which we did for the American Rescue Plan ARP IDEA grant. We've been seeing some of the claims come through for these, and people still aren't using Fund 259. So this is my reminder to you that it had its own fund. So if you need to crosswalk or journal entry something out and get it into Fund 259, that's what we're expecting you to report it through on iFarms reporting. So please do that, get it in the right fund, and then use the appropriate special education function program codes, okay? For school-aged, you're gonna use the school-age 521. If it's a preschool expense, it'll be 522. Non-instructional will be a 616. Reminder, that period of performance was from July of 21 and it ends this September. Again, and then people still asking, what can I spend that on? It was anything you could do under the regular provisions of IDEA Part B. However, supplement, not supplant does apply. This is different from ESSER. Like ESSER 3 had some wiggle room on this, but IDEA remained IDEA and everything under IDEA. So what does that mean to you in the special ed world? Well, I say to people, if you didn't have a way to spend it out, you could take funds out of your regular year grant that you had budgeted, and you could say, well, I budgeted Q1 staff over in Fund 257, and can I take those expenses and move it over? Would that be supplanting? Technically, no, that is not supplanting, because as long as within special ed, you still meet your maintenance of effort, you zero out Medicaid, between the IDEA grants and MOE and everything, you can move stuff around. You still just have to meet MOE. If you do that, it's not considered supplanting within those funds of special ed. So if you have questions on that, please call me. I had somebody say, phew, I'm just going to move my Q1 out of Fund 257 over to 259. I'm good, right? Technically, yes, it's an allowable activity for your staff. And then I have the UEI or CFDA, as you might know it, that's important for your audit. It had to be in its own fund, and it also has a different CFDA number. So this is important on the audit side. So that's why I'm preaching it to you guys. I got just reminders for you guys. I'm not going to dwell on this in case you didn't remember the setup and which function program codes you should use for the revenue side as well. You've got to tie out to the GRA, so make sure that you keep these separate for the revenue so that you can understand which was for which, because there were two different grants. We shoved them all into one fund, 259. And then again, I have the breakdown here for school age or for preschool. Now, let me talk really quick about restraint and seclusion grants. There was a lot there that came out in House Bill 281 last spring. And what we decided is that there was no state funding coming to help implement this. And they have a lot in there for you guys to have to do regarding training and the adoption of new policies. So what we did over in the special ed office is we said, hey, let's see if we can send out something to help implement this. We've got to get people trained. And you know, that's a lot of cost to you guys that may not have a lot of professional development funds available right now due to budget constriction and constraint. So what we've done is we did round one, where we said, hey, here's some money, go ahead and retro it back to last year to April if you hadn't closed your books, or you can spend it in this fiscal year, but it's still got to be closed out for that period of performance ending in September. Now, we had launched a new fund to keep track of all these mini grants because there's been so many of them. So if you are spending restraint and seclusion money, do it in Fund 265. Same special ed function program codes. If you have questions, let us know, but it's supposed to be for the cost of training your staff. That's the most expensive part. Now, I've had tons of people also ask me about, what about round two? I missed round one. I was on break, or, you know, what have you. we'll be sending those out very soon, most likely next week. Just we had to get our game plan ready to see how much money we had available to roll out to you all. So you'll be able to apply for that next week. Now let's talk about obligation period, because as you saw me freaking out about all these grants ending, I want to be able to help you guys all out with obligation. Now, again, the red tape with all these grants and all these terms, and what does all this mean? That's what we have this community of practice to break it all down. So what is the obligation of federal funds? This is language from Edgar. So I have the reference here for you, but it's important, really, what I'm trying to get across to you guys today is that obligated doesn't necessarily mean final spent. Obligation is different. It occurs when the agency or the LAA actually entered into a binding commitment to pay out money. So let's say you had to enter a contract to pay for supplies or services. You've obligated it. You've technically made that purchase in your mind that this is going to happen, but you may not have received something, or the final services may not have been performed. Maybe that delivery can't happen, or that contractor can't finish the work until October. There's certain provisions that allow that, but you are in a binding commitment now. So you have formally obligated those funds. And again, the second bullet here means the amounts on the orders placed, contracts, subgrants awarded, goods and services received, all of these that happen during a given budget period that will require the payment. So really our obligation, you've obligated it, but then we have this extra period of closeout that comes after that. Obligate it by the 30th, final delivery and closing it all out happens after that. Usually on the State Department side, we like to see that done by the end of December, but you'll need to check each of your individual grants for that. Now, again, obligation is that point in time when the obligation occurs, but it also depends on the type of property or service to help you determine when an actual obligation is made. Because it can't be that easy, right? So we're going to show you a table in the next slide that you guys, maybe this is the one you print out and put on your wall. I usually give you one of these slides each time we do a communities of practice, but it's based off of the type. So we're going to sit on here for a while and look at this. Let's look at the very first one, letter A. If the obligations for the acquisition of property, it's the date that you made the commitment for it. You ordered that HVAC system in July. And you know what? It's been on back order and it's not going to get here until October. And the guy's going to install it in November, right? But the contractor is obligated and the purchase is obligated to both get the equipment and for the contractor. So that was A, but the part about the contractor that's not an employee of the state or the LEA, because you're the sub-grantee, that would be letter C. And it's the date when you made the commitment to do that work. And we all know that construction and a lot of those other service delivery pieces, sometimes they get behind too. When have you ever had a house built or seen construction? We know that they get delayed. They get delayed because of they're waiting on a supply or the right person to be able to be available. So this is the slide for you guys to look at. And then like letter D, the performance of work other than personal services. It's again, that date you made that binding commitment to obtain the work. Did you hire somebody to come in and do something? Even if you hired someone to come in and do a training, it's based on the fact that you've hired them to do this service. So you're going to want to check with your grant person if you have questions about this, but this is the slide. I've got the link to the subpart cost principles here to help you. But I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, we didn't get that thing we ordered and it didn't get delivered by September 30th. It's okay if you've obligated it. So call us if you don't understand that. That's our job. We want you to understand the obligation period because we want you to still know that you can grab those funds when you're doing your closeout. Now, this is something I get asked a lot. What about, can the cost of a contract be obligated to a grant, even if some of the services have to be performed after the period ends? Well, I say possibly. In most cases, yes. Again, under the regular foundational uniform grant guidance. Now, some of these pandemic funds may have something else wonky going on. So I say here, some grants have special provisions that must be possibly closed out sooner or later or finalized end dates depending on. So make sure you reach out to that grant manager over here at the State Department of Ed if you have questions. If you can't tell from your GAN or your grant award notification, it should tell you there, but if you have questions on it, reach out. That's our job. Okay, now speaking of reaching out, we're going to start talking about communication. Today, we're going to do effective internal communication. So when I say internal, I'm talking mostly about internal within our schools and our districts. So the first thing I want to talk about is mindset and attitude. Now, this will go across for outward community partners and whatnot too. But to close the gap, let's think about the gap between your fiscal office and your programmatic office, or maybe it's your principal and everybody else. So think about mindset. Look at things from different angles. I'm actually not that big of a cat person, but my daughter gave me this one. But you have to change the image to truly have it become a partnership. So when you guys think about, we have this over here at the State Department. Do we have silos of excellence and we don't talk to each other? We don't want that. We want to be able to turn it into a partnership. We have to both be able to speak each other's language. We have to be able to articulate our needs, our wants. And some of that comes with our mindset and our attitude. So we have to learn to look at it a different angle. When I was in the fiscal world, sometimes hear these crazy ideas that I thought, why on earth would they be asking to do this, until I stopped to listen and learn what the program was trying to do. Because I'd say, nope, you can't have any food. Well, wait. Oh, I see. So that's where this mindset and attitude comes from. Now, how about communication and engagement? Invest in training each other. Train each other on terminology, rules, timing, all of that. If you're the business office, talk to them about the timing and things ending. If you're the program, talk to them about what this means under Migrant Ed, or what this means under McKinney-Vento, and this initiative you have, or these things you have to do within special education. Talk about that. Invest in each other. Truly, 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 once you guys can speak each other's language, it makes so much better sense. And then I have communicating about budgets and situational changes. Was there a delay? Maybe your entire plan changed and the program person did a whole new budget and submitted it to the state and nobody told fiscal. And then you go to spend against that item and they say, you don't have authority to spend against that. Your whole budget is on personnel. So make sure if you're making those changes that you guys are talking together. You're a team. It's a partnership. The one example I always get is in the special ed world is about Medicaid claim timing. Please, 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 if you're the program person that can coordinate and know where you're at with that, tell the business office, because they are doing this insane balancing act at year end, trying to make sure that they do things in a specific order so that they can meet their level of effort with state funding, and that they can make sure to zero out Medicaid, and then they can grab their IDEA federal funds. All that red tape says, hey, that one's last. So they need to know that. And I always talk about keeping a meeting log, a memo, minutes, whatever works for you. There's so many new technology pieces we can use to keep track of this. You guys probably have internal programs for that. But really, the reason you want to do this is so next time you meet, you all show up with accountability that you've met your deadline, and you all know what that expectation is going to be. But you've also focused on what you plan to be the next step, so you can come back with what was expected. And this really, the bottom line here, it helps you be more engaged and responsive to the needs of the program or to fiscal, so that nobody gets frustrated. This really gives you empowerment. So take this as a positive thing. And then the next piece to talk about, I think this part's my favorite, but real good communication will facilitate cooperation. That's that partnership building. There's all these pieces of the puzzle. You need all the players there to understand each other. So think about that. Transferring information, this first one is key. From those who can figure out an optimal strategy, because maybe they understand it better. They've got to be involved. To those, to be able to tell the person that doesn't fully understand it. That's how you build that relationship and invest in each other's training. And then you're going to be able to exchange a mutual commitment to get this thing done. And that really leads to the next one. That will increase your trust, but it also helps the expectation of the other's behavior. So when you guys are both committed and you start trusting each other, then the expectation piece comes with that because you know that you've committed to it. And then it really will add value to the payoff structure later on. And when I say payoff, I mean the piece about being more fluid and understanding each other's programs. And then last couple here, it's also a reinforcement of those prior normative values that you may have had that may have been siloed, but now they're together. And it helps you guys, again, that partnership, that group identity, you can build that together, those relationships and partnerships. This is another good one for your wall. I used to print stuff out and put it on my wall and stare at it. I don't know if you guys do that or not. Now, how about some challenges? I don't want to diminish the challenges of being a collaborative manager. And when I say collaborative, that goes back to that communication piece. Collaborative managers, it's a different world because you've got to do both pieces. You're trying to build these relationships, but you're trying to work both with autonomy and interdependence. You're sharing those common goals and you're intertwining those interests, but you're going to have to be able to do like both sides of the spectrum. You have to be able to work with a greater variety of groups and people and diversity. You have to be participatory and authoritative. You'll got to be able to give your elevator speech on the details and the big picture, and then balance that advocacy and inquiry. You have to balance the two out. And when I just dove right into collaborative management, but that goes back to the partnerships too. You might be the manager, but you're working with somebody else that's not a manager. So again, the two go together. They may not always play together, but most managers have to play this piece here at some point. Now, I like this earn respect and build trust. Working together from the management or from trench worker to trench worker, as I used to call it in the business office. Maybe you're not the manager, but you're payables and you're working with somebody in payroll or whatever it might be. This working together will yield respect and trust over time. And really this trust factor, it takes a long time to build and just a little short time to break it. So that respect has to be earned. I love this one on the left. Respect is earned, honesty is appreciated, trust is gained, but loyalty is returned. And that goes back to that whole partnership piece. I can't stress that enough. I know you guys probably have heard these things before, but it's always helpful, I think, to hear it. Earn that respect, build that trust. That's so important. Now I want to pause. Even if no one puts anything in the chat, we're going to start doing more with Mentimeter and things, I hope next month, to have you guys be able to put stuff up on the screen to see how you're feeling. But how do you guys effectively communicate with your own staff across departments and schools? Even if you just reflect on this for a minute in your own mind, how does your district charter, how do you do that? Do you favor any specific internal strategy? Maybe there's a program you use, maybe there's this monthly communication that you have to do or meeting times. But the last one here is, what are some of the ways that you could enhance that communication? Is it through technology? Is it through a face-to-face meeting? Is maybe you try technology and it's just not working for you? So this is a good chance for you guys to reflect. Think about that. Is there something I could do differently? Maybe technology works with this one group and it doesn't work with this other. We just need to sit at the table together. I'm not sure if there's anybody out there that wants to unmute, but if there is, anybody wants to share anything, even if you send me an email later, I'd love to share it out. If there's something that has worked well for you, some change you've made, maybe you're implementing it now and you'll tell me in 6 months. But pause and think about these things. How do I effectively communicate? Or maybe I think I'm effectively communicating, but maybe I could do it better. We'll be providing some more resources when we talk about this even further next month. All right. Well, guys, that was some warm and fuzzy, but now we got to talk about more fiscal stuff because the audits are coming. So not to scare anybody, because some of you guys are already done and you're already like, oh, I made it through, I'm good. But maybe You haven't. So do you know if your district or charter, your LEA, required a single audit? Let's talk about that for a few minutes. Single audits. Did pandemic funding put you in a single audit threshold this year or in the last years? Possibly, based on what you're spending. Here's the rules behind it and why this comes up, because some people are like, I don't understand what's happening. We've never had this before. Some of it happened because you got so much pandemic funding and you actually spent it in a given year. So the language behind this is in our friend 2 CFR 200-501. And I have A versus B in the two bullets. They look very similar, but the language is different slightly. And it just says that if you exceed the spending against, so you've expended at least $750,000 or more during a given year on a single program, you got to get audited. You got to have at least one of those programs audited. And the two here show you the second bullet here talks about how you have to have a single audit conducted in accordance with what we call the scope of the audit requirements. Sometimes you read this language and you're like, what's the difference? What is the scope of the audit requirements? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let's talk about that. The scope of the audit has several provisions within it that are really boring to read through and not very, not very fun to try and pick out the pieces that are important. So we'll do that for you. It just basically says in general, under the what's known as the GAGAS, or the Generally Accepted Government Accounting Standards, auditing standards, the audit has to cover the entire operations of the auditee, or at least a single program. There's some other provisions within that. But the piece that comes out of this is it talks about how what's being looked at, it's important that they look through all the programs to help put together the financial statements and what's known as the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And so they've looked through that to determine, what you're doing, and to help determine which ones needed to be considered for audits. So if you've never heard of the CFA, it might be something your auditors help put together for you. But that's taking information out of your financial statements, from all the expenditures from all of your federal awards, not just those over $750,000. And the financial statement piece, the auditor has to help determine whether the financial statements that they've seen from you are presented in a fair manner with all the material respects in accordance to GAAP, those generally accepted accounting principles. So this isn't the auditor just choosing to do what they want to do. This is the ruling on it. They also have to determine that schedule of federal expenditures of federal awards. So they have to see if it's stated fairly in all the respects in the relationship to your whole financial system. Usually those pages come almost at the very end of your audit, if you're ever looking for those. And the other piece they're looking at in letter C here is internal control. So that means the compliance to it. What do you have? Do you have the right funds? Do you have the right unique identifiers? Do you know what the provisions are in the spending and all those different pieces? And all that comes from the compliance supplement, which we've trained on a little before. So that is the guide. That is the auditor's guide that tells them what to do. It tells them the standards for control. It tells them everything that they've got to look at. And all of this is issued by this Committee of Sponsoring Organizations of the Treadway Commission, or COSO. But in addition to that, they have to follow the requirements under that GAGAS, that Generally Accepted Governmental Accounting Standards. That's what they call the Yellow Book. And the auditor has to look at that. They have to perform certain procedures. They're testing that they have to look at, so they can determine if you have the right internal controls, that you're doing the right things with your programs, so that they can also support a low assessment of risk control for other major components. So when they do the deeper dive on one, they're going to say, I didn't find anything here, and I can therefore say that this is a low risk auditee. Compliance, we always talk about compliance. Really, this is to determine whether you've complied with all of the regulations, and did it have any material effect on any of the other major programs. And so that principal compliance requirement will show you within the compliance supplement. It'll show you all the details of the largest federal programs that are included in there. And then it has some general applicability for the smaller programs. But internal controls and non-compliance, that's a lot to read. What they're looking for is, is there an internal control that will likely be able to be applied to other programs, and or is it the opposite? Is it likely that you would have noncompliance? If you've detected it here, it would be over there as well. So the auditor has to report if there's any significant deficiency or material weakness that they think might change the risk overall. So that's what all these different pieces mean. But not going to go too in the weeds on that. And then finally here, part E and F, the audit follow-up. They will conclude what's happened. They'll have to possibly perform an audit follow-up procedure, if applicable, and then the data collection form. So if you're not familiar with any of these, reach out. We can try and talk through with you. Most of these are super high level accounting things. Just want to give people an idea of all the pieces that they look at within these audited programs. Okay. How about audit advice? Because that was a lot. Well, just high level. Let's go back high level. We're doing the elevator speech now. What can we do? I like this planning here. What can we do? Well, we have to start with communication, and we have to start early. Program and fiscal. We got to get back down to program and fiscal. We got to develop a game plan. And that might include your superintendent or anybody else that might be interviewed, because a lot of those programmatic monitorings, those single audits, they're going to interview your program staff possibly. And you guys know from your own CPA audits that sometimes they'll audit or they'll interview someone that's a newer staff to the business office, different components. So have a game plan, have everybody understand how it works so it's not so scary and so people know what they're going to be asked. Now, to enhance that outcome, here's some other ideas for you. Organize your documentation to avoid last-minute lost documents that you can't present. There's nothing worse than having your auditor ask for something and you can't find something. You're like, I know we have that. So appoint team members for this enhanced performance and accountability. So appoint team members that will work together or partner. Judy and Mary, you're going to be on this, and Joe and Susie, you're going to be on that. Make sure that you have people as point people to communicate to the programmatic side maybe. But the bottom line is, something that I love that I had from a previous business manager was to believe in your staff and represent that way. Tell them you believe in them, that you know that they're going to provide good work and that you know that they provide good work all year. And this is your chance to present your best to the auditor. Darn straight we do a good job and you know it. So this is your chance to do that. So make sure you're organized. Just pause and reflect if you just finished an audit, what went well and what didn't, and how can we plan for some better organization plan next year. And then reminders on that compliance supplement. Don't be afraid of it. It's your cheat sheet to know what the auditors are going to be looking at for the big major programs. Don't forget. Go study that. Maybe you give an assignment to someone on your business office staff and say, hey, we want to get more familiar with the compliance supplement and what they're looking at for some of these programs. Maybe we had our single audit and we did okay on Migrant Ed when they looked at it, or on McKinney-Vento when they looked at it. But we want to know what they were looking for so we can do better next time. And maybe we target those pieces in those regular meetings that we have with program and fiscal. So that could be something, but look at the compliance supplement, try and understand it. This is, again, fiscal stuff, but it also involves programs. So you can't just say, oh, that's only fiscal. Some of the ugly language we looked at with all those CFRs might be fiscal, but it applies to the program. So don't forget it's that partnership. Now, back to resources and upcoming training opportunities. Getting here. Finally, I have gotten your fiscal quick guide ready. I hope to have it posted on the website tomorrow. There's a lot of little nuances. I wanted to get questions and answers in there at the end. And so that's the format that it's going to take. These are quick guides for you guys to reference. When can I buy federal or food with federal programs? There'll be questions at the end to say things like, oh, if I'm doing a community engagement night under Migrant Ed, could I possibly buy this? And you'll get an answer. And if I run a transition program and we have goals on our IEPs to learn how to cook breakfast, can we buy ingredients? And we'll have an answer. And so we're going to try and build answers in that we think would be applicable for you so that you have a one-stop shop, not a 20-page PowerPoint that you have to go look for the answer. We're going to really hit on important facts, and we're going to look for you guys to make it better. So when you guys see this one come out, and it should come out tomorrow, even if I can get it posted, and you say, it would really be nice if you added this to it, please tell us. We want to make it better, make it more meaningful to you. So that, or even some ideas of, hey, I saw the first one and I would love to see one on this topic. We're going to put out the ones we've thought of, but we want to know what you'll be interested in. And maybe we'll put a poll out next time to see what other things you guys might be interested in. Now, I only put one on here for this, but there's always a lot going on. And we'll try and put together a better list for you. But the one I wanted to highlight, I don't know if any of you guys made it to the one in Boise last week. It was actually in Nampa, in the Boise area, these fall workshops that we do. And it's for administrators and program folks, but I've seen fiscal folks come. We do a lot of different pieces in the weeds. If you've never gone to one, I would encourage you to try to get to one next year. There is still one coming up next week. Up north, we're going up north this time to try and provide some in-person trainings for that as well. There's so much that we teach at those. So if you couldn't attend, at least get on the website and get a hold of those PowerPoints. Again, we train on the things that we think you guys need, or that we've had feedback on that we need clarification on. Our federal programs staffing and special ed staffing and assessment accountability, all these people here at the State Department want to help you. We provide trainings, but we want to provide ones that are meaningful. So we really rely on you guys to help us know the pieces that still might be missing for you. What was still there that you didn't have answered, or how could we have clarified something better? So please attend those and give us feedback. And I always want to close with the fact that we know you guys are making a huge difference. Your time and energy does not go unnoticed. The State Department is always advocating for you guys and trying to notice the things you do and notice the struggles you're having. So please keep that communication back to us so that we know the other ways we can help you. And then again, just to thank you for that effort, that dedication and investment in our students. You're investing in our future because they're going to run the world soon. And then I always close out with my superhero stuff because that's how I feel about you guys. I know you guys are wearing many, many hats. So stay focused and stay super and stay motivated. Because these are the guys that it matters for. These kiddos, they so rely on the products and services and programs that we are putting out for them. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Reach out at any time. This is our federal program staff. Send us information on what you want to know more about. And then here's our special ed contacts. Email myself or Israel. We can always help facilitate things as well. And I hope to see you guys next time on Communities of Practice, where we're going to learn from the Idaho PTA on ways that they can help support our schools as well. Until next time, you guys, we'll sign off. Thanks for being here today. And I hope to see you guys again next month on Communities of Practice. Have a great day, everybody.